What's up, everyone? Welcome to the MIDCONVO podcast. We're ready to dive into this one because we're going to be talking about playing against yourself. Paul, what does that even mean? Give a little teaser. What are we going into today?
Oh man, we're going to talk about what it's like running a freelance business and not having a boss, maybe not having coworkers, and figuring out how do you stay motivated? How do you celebrate wins? What does accountability look like? And then ultimately, how do you run this marathon of being a freelancer when you're playing against yourself? But hey, we're about to get into the meat here, but let's roll that intro music. How this topic came about was I was with my wife, we were driving in the car, and she's like, hey, I feel like over the last 6 months, you've done so much in your business, you don't take time to celebrate. And I'm like, you're right. And she's like, I just want to tell you, you're constantly playing against yourself. So that's when I called Ed and I'm like, yo, we're about to run an episode on this. And that is why we're bringing this to you guys today.
Yeah, I think what I took away from when Paul sent me that voice message of after that conversation he had with Sammy was, it's so true because as freelancers, even if you're not freelancing, honestly, you could be working a job for someone as well. There's kind of this constant pressure to perform. Everyone wants to perform at the highest level. Sometimes they're looking at their routine. Sometimes they're looking at their circle. Sometimes they're gauging it off of vanity metrics. Like if you have X amount of followers, then you're crushing it, right? You're performing. But what does that even mean? Like, how do you gauge yourself on how well you're doing? And so that's why it was fascinating when Paul told that to me, because when you actually gauge yourself off yourself, there's some interesting things that could come to the surface. And I think you talked on it a little bit just a couple minutes ago, but what are the things that we're looking into today in today's episode? We're talking about accountability. There's a few other things that you're talking about as well on playing against yourself.
Yeah, celebrating wins. When is a good time to just take a breather and say, hey, let's reflect? And then also, how do you stay motivated as an entrepreneur or freelancer, or maybe someone that's working remote, isn't around coworkers, and also finds themselves feeling like they're playing against themselves? So let's dive into it. Let's first start with motivation, because if we're speaking to the crowd of freelancers for a minute, creative entrepreneurs, it can be a lonely journey, right? It can be super lonely. That's why we have the MIDCONVO, is because we want to open up this dialogue and we want to cultivate community so others can feel like, they can ask the hard questions and we can learn and grow. With that being said, Ed, what comes to mind when you think of just like your own business? How have you stayed motivated as someone who wakes up, goes to your spare bedroom that you turn into an office, and you're constantly grinding and trying to figure out how to grow your own business when you're surrounded with friends that might work a 9 to 5, that might have more routine, that might have these quarterly performance conversations and these bonuses? How do you stay motivated?
This is a really good question because it is something that's been on my mind a bit more frequently. I feel like motivation is not really what I'm striving for anymore, to answer your question. I've realized over the years, trying to do this whole creative business thing, motivation comes and goes. Even between me and Paul, like for the podcast or our own businesses, I know when Paul's like feeling motivated to get something done, and it's like the blinders are on. But then there are other times where I can tell where like you want to take your foot off the gas a little bit, you want to take it a bit easier. Same vice versa for me. Like you can feel that from me. It's the energy that I give off on a certain task or a certain project. And so for me, I realized the routine is really big to impact the motivation. Before, I would rely on being motivated a lot. Each day I wake up, I'm like, am I motivated to do this? If the answer is no, then I kind of drag my feet through the process. But if you have a solid routine in place and you have those time blocks or you have those triggers in your day that help you stay focused, it kind of just, whether you have motivation or not, you're performing at a high level. And that's something that I've realized. The more important question is instead of saying, how do you stay motivated? It's more of, what is your routine every single day so that you don't fall off? And that's what I've been focusing on more of. So for me personally, my routine always starts in the morning and then it ends towards like 5 or 6 p.m. But maybe we can share a little bit about our personal routines. I mean, obviously your routine, being a dad of 2, almost 3 kids now and being married and living in a geographically different area than me, your routine's going to look different than mine. But maybe we can try to find some common denominators between our routines that really help us stay like locked in on a weekly basis.
That's good. I constantly am gravitating towards being with other people in community. Like I'm FaceTiming my friends. I call you Ed all the dang time. Guess what? It's because it's just me. I'm in my at-home office every single day working. But I think it's acknowledging when it's okay to press like pause on work and do things that are going to fuel, you know, those other enjoyments and hobbies. For me, it's just like my routine is heavily balanced with balancing work and life because I got 2 little girls. I got a wife who works from home and also is just a full-time mom. So I think for me, it's like you said, routine is valuable, but also at the end of the day, I know that I'm doing what I love because when I'm doing it, I feel inspired. I feel creative. I feel like this natural drive to keep doing more and more, even in a world that we live in of like speed. So whenever I acknowledge that I'm not motivated, guess what? It's okay. I take a deep breath and I do something that's going to maybe fuel me in a different way.
Yeah, understanding when to step away is huge. I feel like too many times we're forcing things. And if you feel like you're forcing anything, there's probably either A, a better route to do it, or B, you might be slightly burned out. You just need to take a step back and re-strategize.
I was going to say with the playing against yourself, I grew up playing basketball. And when I thought of this, and when my wife was asking me like, hey, how are you doing? Do you ever take time to celebrate? What came to mind was this picture of me playing basketball, guarding myself. And I'm like, yo, this gave me lots of anxiety because guess what? I feel like I'm pretty good at defense and I'm a decent shooter. But if I replicated myself on the court and I tried guarding myself, guess what? It's going to be extremely hard to get past me. It's going to be extremely hard to put off a shot. It's going to be extremely hard to have a moment where I'm like, okay, cool. Who's winning? Who's not? Because it's me playing against myself. So I think the context of how do you stay in it? How do you stay in the nitty gritty grind of building a business? I think it also comes with surrounding yourself with other people that are doing it. Because then you're not an alien. You're not weird. You're not, you're able to bring ideas back and forth and be like, yo, this is what I'm going through. Guess what? Me too. This is how I got past it. That's why I feel like community and people, just being surrounded by other like-minded people is so important when you're playing against yourself.
Yeah. Playing against yourself kind of is in the same line of thinking as staying in your lane, staying in your own lane, that type of energy. And the reason why I think that's so valuable, and maybe you can speak on this as well, is when you're comparing yourself, we all deal with like comparison to a certain degree. When you're comparing yourself to other people, it's so easy to get quickly discouraged on what you're currently working on, right? It's like if you're training for something and on day one, you go and look at the person next to you and they're literally crushing it, you're gonna feel a little bit demoralized. I mean, there's 2 types of people. Some people use it as motivation. They're like, oh my gosh, I got a long way to go. And some people though, they retract and they say, I don't even want to start because look at this person next to me, they're already crushing it. So depending on the type of person you are, if you're listening to this, you fall into one of those 2 categories of types of personality. For me, I've realized I need a healthy balance of both. I don't want to be so in my own lane where I'm oblivious to what's happening around me and like not taking good inspiration from other people, not building off of what I know it's working. But at the same time, I don't want to compare myself to the point where it's crippling, where it causes me to not want to move forward because I just see how far the journey ahead is. If you really just focus on your own lane and your own, like, being on offense against yourself, like you were saying with the basketball illustration, that's the quickest way to grow. Like literally, it's the quickest way to grow. Because if you start focusing on other people's journey besides your own, you're going to start doing things that don't feel natural to you because you can't be the spitting image of someone else. That's their journey. That's what they're on. And if you try to replicate it, you'll always just be like a copy. You'll always just be like a replica of someone else.
Hey.
And no one wants to copy.
No one wants to be the model home, bro.
No. And in order to not be like that, you got to stay in your own lane. Yeah. That's kind of how it goes.
Come on. That's good. I think what goes hand in hand with what we're talking about routine, how to stay motivated, is I believe there's a lack of accountability sometimes. And maybe it's less accountability and it's more so just back what we were saying, loneliness. Because if I compare myself to what I grew up with, my dad was working a pretty stable job throughout my entire childhood, 9 to 5. He would always leave at 8. We'd get to work. We'd get home at 6 because he was off at 5 and there's traffic. And every once in a while, every quarter, I remember he'd come home and be like, yo, we're going out to eat. And I'm like, what happened? He's like, I got a raise or I got a bonus. And that was a cool moment because we were able to celebrate him. And if I like kind of ask myself, are there any moments like that? I'll be honest, Ed, when we have conversations and we're talking about wins in our own businesses together, I'm the last one to post and go out and tell people, hey, guess what I just did? What is that? How do you feel about that? Because I think we were talking about this off the mic and that like growing up, what was it like for you? Like your parents?
I mean, we going to Olive Garden, baby. That's what we're going when we're celebrating.
Hey, the unlimited breadsticks?
Dude, people be sleeping on that 5 cheesy, you feel me?
Bro, I love that you brought up Olive Garden because I think, tell me if I'm wrong for saying this, but what if all of us listening to this episode, even me and you, block off once a month or once a quarter, maybe at the end of the quarter, a day or a night where you just splurge. Whether your thing is like eating out and eating that good meal, and it's about you. It sounds weird, but tell your spouse, tell your friends, hey, you guys get to go to the happy hours, you guys get to go to the Christmas parties for work, but your boy's doing a quarterly, all-out dining experience.
Dude, that would be, I feel like, see, that's the kind of stuff I don't do enough, I feel like a lot of people who are running their own thing don't do, again, like celebrating the wins like we just talked about. You don't do that enough. And I think it's hard because at a typical job structure, right? Like you have quarterly goals, you have benchmark, like you have these things you're aiming towards. And if you're, let's say you're a salary employee as well, one of the things you're striving towards is a higher salary. And once you hit it, you can like kind of bask in that win because you're just kind of waiting until that next salary bump or that next bonus or whatever. That's all good. But I think also when you're trying to grow something like a creative business, a lot of it is not always monetarily based. Sometimes it's metric based, like the number of followers you have, which is completely out of your control. There's so many things where like the goalpost is constantly moving, you know? Like the moment you hit 10K followers on something, you're already thinking about hitting 15K or 20K. Like that enjoyment of basking in like hitting 10K is so short-lived. And that can be said about any goalpost or any goal that you set in front of yourself. And especially, like you said, when you're a freelancer and you're working by yourself, you know, it's easy when you go to a corporate company and you get a salary bump or you get a promotion. There's like a group of friends waiting for you in the break room to be like, hey, yo, like, congratulations on your promotion. Yeah. But like when you work for yourself, it's like you go into your home office and you're like, okay, on to the next.
Yeah.
And it's so easy to get in that very repetitive moving goalposts, accomplishing it, moving goalposts, accomplishing it. Like at what point do you just pull the plug and you actually give yourself some credit and like reap the benefits of what you got? And again, I think a lot of it does come down to personality. You know, that's something that I know about you is that you kind of have that like never satisfied, always hungry type of mentality, which is a great thing for a business. But then sometimes when it comes to your personal life, it's like you don't give yourself the credit that I feel like you deserve either. So it's like, how do you find that balance in between giving yourself credit, but not so much credit where your business doesn't grow? It's a really like, it's a very thin line. You're trying to thread the needle there, but it's so important to talk about because there are so many creatives that I feel like because they didn't give themselves that credit along the way, they work for 6 years and feel like they built nothing, which is not true.
Wow.
But that's kind of how people feel sometimes.
I want to hone in on that for a minute because you brought it up. As entrepreneurs, as people that work for themselves, when you're playing against yourself, you're always striving for more. When is it enough? When are you satisfied? That's the danger, I think, even in myself when I'm like, oh, I got to go to the next step. Or, oh, I landed that dream client. I got to keep going. Or I hit my income goal for the year. I could take off work, in October throughout the rest of the year. Or do I keep going? And I think the danger in it all is you can experience burnout. You can experience work overtaking your life. That happens with a lot of entrepreneurs. But it's just something to be aware of because I've experienced it firsthand. I know you have, Ed, where it's like the go, go, go mentality. And from the outside, you don't know when to stop or when, you hit the benchmark, because it's that ceiling that just keeps on getting broken, which you brought up a good point. And you preface with most 9-to-5ers, they know, okay, I work 3 years. I'm going to get a raise if performance is good. I'm going to have my meeting with my boss. If it goes well, I'll get my end of the year performance, all that stuff. But yeah, there's more flexibility with entrepreneurship, but also there can easily be instability running a business. So I think just calling those things out and being aware of it, I think is important.
Yeah. I do think a more balanced approach for playing against yourself, though, is just understanding that it's okay to also have moving goalposts. Like, you don't want to be stagnant, to be honest. It's the same thing as that saying goes, where if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. It's the same concept where if you hit a goal and you're like, okay, cool, I'm going to chillax now, that's not going to bring you joy either, because the way we're designed, the way our brains work, we want to be constantly moving forward. And playing against yourself, I think, staying in your lane is the healthiest way to bar where you're headed and gauging yourself off yourself. Because again, if you don't do that, you're going to fall into the comparison trap. And comparison trap is when everything falls apart if you're not careful. So I feel like making sure that you have that mentality of continued growth and you're using yourself as a gauge. That's why people say, imagine, think for a second, the version of you 5 years ago. If you told that person, that young Paul, that young Ed, that you'd be here in 5 years, how would that person feel? And they'd,
that's good.
They'd
reflection.
They'd be, for both of us, I know that they would be ecstatic. They'd be like, shoot, I didn't even know that was possible. But why is it that we're here now and we're already looking at what our future 5-year self would want and not giving ourselves the win that our previous 5-year younger self would have wanted? So, I think that conversation you had with Sammy was really awesome, because it's self-reflective of, I want to be moving the goalpost, but I want to move it in a way that feels not burning myself out, not giving myself credit. I think there are many times where you and I share wins together, and because our wins continue to get higher and higher and higher, we feel like we need to keep this bar high. But that's not always the case. We can have small wins, we can have big wins, we can have wins all on the spectrum. A win is a win as long as it's forward,
Well, come on, guy. If you're taking notes, I want you to take out your highlighter and write down, I got to celebrate the 5-year ago old Ed.
Yeah.
So whoever you were 5 years ago, reflect on who you were, what you were doing. Look at yourself now. Would you have ever thought? Celebrate. That's a big one. I think one thing I wanted to kind of close with when we're talking about playing against yourself is you touched on awareness, which I think is valuable, reflection, but also just knowing that even though you might seem like, oh, I'm crushing it, or wow, I'm doing things that I never thought I would do, just know there's always room to grow. So it's we're playing against ourselves, and we don't have a coach. That's hard. We don't have a boss. So imagine trying to coach a team, imagine a basketball team going out on the floor. March Madness is happening right now. Imagine there not being a coach all season. There'd be a lot of issues. So just know that there's a lot of room to grow. Right now, I'm seeking mentorship, because I think finding people that are older than me that are in business, even if they're not entrepreneurs, but they play, maybe a character of marketing, or they have their hands in some of the higher level stuff at businesses, I want to learn from them, because then when I'm playing against myself, I'm able to go through it and also have a much clearer vision of, okay, cool, this is where I want to go. I want to build a healthy family. I also want to build a healthy business. How do I build that? How do I build stability? So that's something that just kind of comes to mind. Ed, I also wanted to call out that even though I feel like I'm playing against myself, at times I feel like you're on my team. I feel like you're my bench player. I'm just kidding. No, I feel like, bro, I'm
that sixth man. I'm that sixth man that comes in.
I feel like when I step out of my at-home office, I'm all of a sudden in intramural sports, or playing pickup basketball at the local court with the hoop with the chains on it. And I feel like you're always the guy on the court that is playing with me, and we're able to bounce ideas back and forth, which I think is cool, man. And I'm thankful for that, because this podcast is ultimately a place where we can practice what we preach.
Yeah.
We can bring things to the table that we're going through. Like as we've grown our businesses, as we've been playing against ourselves, we laugh. We can like bring up topics that are easy and hard to talk about. And I just wanted to call that out.
Shoot, bruh. I'll continue to play basketball with you, dog. On the C team, though.
Hey, yo, shout out to Ed who made the B team sophomore year.
No, but honestly, I think playing against yourself, hopefully people took away something from this episode. Again, I think the key takeaway is, like Paul just mentioned, understanding to find that community. Community is huge. Keep yourself accountable, but also don't fall into that trap of comparing yourself because everyone's in different journeys, everyone in a different lane. You know, sometimes I feel like we don't give ourselves credit, like we just talked about, where you were 5 years ago. So make sure that you don't buy into this hype of like, go, 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 go. There's a season to sprint, but there's also a season to rest. And so if you feel like you are in that season of like burning out, no community, constantly feeling you're going against the current, it might be time just to like recalibrate a little bit, figure out where you've come, and then go back in full force against yourself, about no one else, against yourself. And that should be the gauge of how you move forward and how you improve in your business, in your life, everything, your skill set. That's the only way you can really grow, is using yourself as a benchmark. Because if you use someone else, yeah, you might land somewhere in the middle, or you might, feel good, but you don't want to be the copy, bro. You don't want to be falling in someone's shadow. You want to make your own path, always.
That's good. I also want to encourage you guys, off of what Ed said, to celebrate the wins. Go to Olive Garden. And then also
breadsticks, baby.
Even if you got to time block it on your calendar at the end of the quarter, do it. Hit up your friends and say, yo, we're celebrating me. And yeah, I just want to encourage you guys that while you're listening to this episode, while you're taking notes, and maybe as this wraps up, look back at you 5 years ago and now look at where you're at now. Come on. You know what I mean? You crushing it. This is MIDCONVO. Right. Ed,
hold up.
You want to say it?
Hold up. We gotta ask people. You gotta still ask, if you found value, leave that 5-star review, baby.
Yo.
No, for real though.
Hit us with that 5-star.
5-star review would be awesome. This is part where we sign off.
Yeah, if you guys want to listen to more episodes, MIDCONVO.com, streaming on all platforms. Peace out.